Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open a file stamped Top Secret. We're stepping into a world of encrypted data, covert operations, and shadowy corridors. We're looking at an entity that has literally shaped world history in ways most people will never see. For decades, one name has been surrounded by profound mystery, fierce controversy, and an absolute impenetrable veil of secrecy. I mean, just imagine it for a second. What if one single organization had the power to quietly influence foreign governments, flip world leaders, recruit spies, and run high-stakes missions all over the globe, completely under the radar? It's kind of a staggering thought, right? Well, that's exactly what we're unpacking today. We're talking about the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. We're going to dive into the secret history of this agency, using declassified documents to figure out exactly how it operates in the shadows. To really grasp how the agency operates today, we've got to rewind to its birth. Picture this. It's 1947. World War II has just ended, and the globe is plunging into a highly volatile new era. The United States and the Soviet Union are locked in this intense struggle known as the Cold War. America is deeply, deeply fearful of communist expansion across Europe and Asia. So, in response to this existential threat, President Harry Truman signs the National Security Act. Boom, that is the exact moment the CIA is officially born. Its core mission? To gather intelligence and protect national security at all costs. Okay, let's dive into this file because clearing up this distinction is absolutely crucial. You might immediately think of the FBI, but they play a totally different game. The FBI operates mostly inside the US, focusing on domestic law enforcement. The CIA's mandate is completely different. Their mission is strictly foreign intelligence and covert operations overseas. They're looking outward. And, because of the sheer nature of operating on foreign soil, they rapidly morphed into one of the world's most secretive organizations. And this global shadow war escalated incredibly fast. The Cold War wasn't just fought with traditional armies. It was fought with secret agents swapping briefcases on rainy European streets, intercepted radio transmissions, sabotage, and propaganda. The CIA and the Soviet KGB were locked in this silent, deadly game of chess across the globe. Both sides were actively recruiting informants and secretly pulling the strings of foreign governments. A lot of these operations stayed buried in the archives for decades, and as we'll see, some are still classified today. Let's open File 1, Operation Ajax, 1953. The target here was Iran. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh had just nationalized Iran's oil industry, which made the US and Britain terrified of losing their strategic influence in the region. So the CIA steps in. They covertly orchestrate efforts that ultimately ousted Mossadegh from power, allowing the Shah of Iran to return. Now, looking at this impartially, the historical debate here is fierce. On one hand, supporters argue this operation successfully protected vital Western interests during a really critical time. But on the flip side, critics point out that it severely damaged democracy in Iran and planted the seeds for long-term instability in the Middle East. It remains one of the CIA's most heavily debated missions. Moving on to File 2, the Bay of Pigs, 1961. If you want a textbook example of how covert actions carry massive unintended risks, this is it. The CIA backed an invasion, landing hundreds of Cuban exiles at the Bay of Pigs, fully expecting this massive popular uprising against Fidel Castro. Well, that didn't happen. The invasion catastrophically failed. Most of the invaders were captured, and the US was left deeply embarrassed on the world stage. But the real kicker? Instead of removing Castro, the operation actually cemented his power, and ironically pushed Cuba straight into the arms of the Soviet Union. Talk about a geopolitical backfire. Next up is File 3, Project MKUltra, starting in the 1950s. Now, this is a heavy one. This file contains some of the most controversial operations in the agency's entire history. The CIA was basically funding top-secret research into mind control and interrogation techniques, experimenting with drugs like LSD, and various other extreme psychological methods. When this finally came to light, it triggered intense government investigations and massive public outcry. Across the board, it's universally recognized as one of the darkest chapters in CIA history, a really stark reminder of what can happen when an agency operates with vast resources and minimal oversight. Which brings us to File 4, Operation Cyclone, in the 1980s. By this point, the theater of the Cold War had shifted to the rugged mountains of Afghanistan following the Soviet invasion, and the CIA didn't just sit back as observers. They funneled immense financial support, supplied heavy equipment, and provided rigorous training to Afghan resistance groups fighting the Soviets. Operation Cyclone became one of the largest covert programs in the history of the CIA. It was an unprecedented logistical undertaking. But, much like Operation Ajax, historians still vigorously debate its long-term consequences and the complex legacy of the groups that were armed during this period.
All right, let's jump forward to File 5, the modern intelligence era.
Forget the dead drops and microfilm. Today's battlefield is completely digital. Right now, the CIA focuses heavily on counterterrorism, cyber intelligence, combating cybersecurity threats, and monitoring incredibly complex global security challenges. Their officers are stationed all over the world, pulling in intelligence to inform the highest-stakes U.S. national security decisions. But here is the crucial thing. Just like back in 1947, the vast majority of what they do remains entirely classified. They are still operating behind an intense wall of secrecy. America's greatest defense? Or the world's most powerful shadow organization? Because they operate in the shadows, the agency draws both profound admiration and intense criticism. Some people firmly believe their secret operations have quietly prevented wars and saved countless lives behind the scenes. Others argue that their covert actions have left devastating, long-lasting political and humanitarian scars. We're presenting both of these starkly contrasting views impartially, because they both define the agency's legacy. A legacy of literally shaping world history unseen. And when you look at these heavily redacted intelligence reports, just page after page of blacked out text, we have to acknowledge a fundamental truth. A huge chunk of CIA history is still hidden. It's locked away in underground vaults, hidden behind classified documents and national security directives. The full scope of what this agency has done over the decades and what they're out there doing right this very second just isn't fully known to us. And some of those secrets, they may simply never be revealed. So, that brings us to the end of our explainer today. As we close this highly classified file, what's your verdict? Based on the history we've traced, from the 1947 National Security Act through the shadowy alleys of the Cold War, all the way to today's digital frontlines, is the CIA fundamentally a necessary guardian of national security, or is it the world's most powerful shadow agency? It's a complex, definitely unresolved thought to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating history. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.